Hello all, I thought I'd share just some shortcuts that I figured out for the Olson mask. So the Olson mask is that fitted one that is like a little bit pointed for the nose up the side. The one that they have online has, you cut out 6 pieces, 4 for the back, 2 for the front, and it has 2 pockets to put the filter in. What I discovered is you can cut that quite a bit by only cutting out 5 pieces. And so for the front of the mask you have the two longer bits, and then for the back you have one side is that longer piece like on the front, and then you have the 2 smaller pieces, and you have one pocket still to turn it inside out once you've sewed it, and you can insert the filter there. The only disadvantage I can think of is they did mention on the video about putting 2-sided tape around to seal it, but I think you could still do that even with this style. But it saves on a lot of cutting, it saves on 6 different stitches and so on. And the other thing is the pieces that they have you cut out of the pattern, they have mouthpiece 1 and mouthpiece 2 and cheek 1 and cheek 2. You really only need one of those. You just have to make sure it's the same, and the back, you can use the back and flip it over. So you only have to cut out 3 pieces of the pattern. You don't have to print out so many pages. You just need to print out the long one and one of each of the short ones. And what I did is cut those pieces out of cereal boxes so it's a little bit stiffer, and I invested in one of these little cutting boards and a cutting tool. So I just double up or quadruple up sometimes the fabric underneath, put my template on and cut around, and it's a lot faster. So I have everything like assembly line style to get going. So the first thing, you can put the right side pieces together for the front of the mask. And I've already done that here. So you start out, and I learned this on someone else's video, I just backstitch the top of it, but I've already got a piece going here from before, and you save pulling out the thread cutting so many times. You just sew them assembly line like this. And you can just take one piece right after the other. So I might sew several fronts together and then continue on. With the other pieces. So then you're going to take the one of the long pieces for the back and the short cheek piece, and sew those together at the seam, at the front seam. And like I say, I would have several of those going in a row, and then you're going to have a piece like this with that short and front piece sewn together. You're going to have several of those, and what you do is you just turn up the hem on the short cheek piece and sew that. And you might have several of those going in a row like this. So you have those sewn together with the cheek pieces, and then you can just snip those little bits. Then you're going to take the back piece there, and you just have to make sure, because it does have, I use a fabric for the back that is 2-sided, so I don't get mixed up on which way I cut these. But you're going to take one of the the pieces that's done, line up the bottom of that and see, I lined it up right the first way, but if you line it up incorrectly, you line up that bottom bit to match, you'll see that it doesn't sit on there right. You can see that it sits crooked, so it really only has one way. So when you get that lined up the right way, you turn that seam up and you can sew several of those for the hem. And do a bunch of those in a row. So now you've got your front piece that's sewn together with the right sides facing. You've got your back piece with that piece hemmed, and what you do, you just line up the nose and you open up those seams. So the way I do it, you don't have to do any pinning or extra seaming or anything. And you open up those two seams and match the bridge of the nose like that. And then I just use my stitch to get it up there. Get that under there. Line that up a little better. And I've discovered that it doesn't matter if it doesn't come out perfectly and line up, because you just trim off the extra bits after. And now you're just sewing that all the way around. And then what I do here is I do the same thing on the bottom, just to open up the seam allowances and try and match it up so those two seams meet. And then when it comes to this piece, you have your little piece like this. You want the raw part of the hem upwards, and I just line that up along the bottom edge here, like that. Lay it across so it matches up with the edge. And when I get to that part, I backstitch a little bit, because that's where you have a little bit more pressure on the fabric from turning it right side out there, and also if you're constantly inserting a filter. So just finish going around the outside. Again with the back stitching there for the part that is going to open and close for the filter. And then when you get to the top, just try and match it up with where you started on the nose piece, and just a little back and forth. There you go. So now you've got your piece inside out, and sometimes I go through and just trim little bits that might be sticking out, and I trim the corners like that so it'll turn right side out nicely. And you just turn it right side out. And you can use like a pen or dull-ended scissors to poke out the corners. And get the corners poked out. And now you've got your piece like that. And I've finished them two different ways. I've finished them like this, where I just bend it over a fine hair elastic, like that on both sides. And you can adjust for different size faces and just bring that in further if they have a smaller face. And the other way I've done it is with the ties. The nurses like this, or the people that have to wear them all day, because they don't want something behind their ears all day. So the way this goes on is this cord isn't the best, but you loop that part around behind your neck, put the mask on, and then tie this bit up over the head. And you can get that on much tighter than just the elastics behind the ear. So those are the two different tie methods.